Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to my 400 affiliates spread across the country and the globe. If you're listening online on YouTube, on Facebook, wherever, Instagram, welcome. I'm Hugh Hewitt, and I'm so pleased to welcome a fellow Northeastern Ohio guy. Keith Krach is the Undersecretary for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment at the Department of State. We've never spoken before. I always disclose my son works at state before I talk to a state person. But he is a NEO, a Northeastern Ohio guy. Keith, welcome. It's good to have you on the show.
Well, Hugh, it's great to be on the show, and I see you're from Warren, Ohio, home, to Packard Electric. When I worked at General Motors, I spent a lot of time down there, so it's great to
I was wondering, you probably played golf at the TCC. I'm hoping you are a Browns fan, are you?
By the way, not only am I a Browns fan, but all my 5 children back in San Francisco are. So, I've converted them to
I did
Browns.
the same thing to all 3 of mine. It's a disease, and it's an important thing to pass on. I want to know if you know Patricia Heaton, who's a Rocky River gal, or John Dennison, who's the only Silicon Valley guy I know really well.
By the way, as a matter of fact, I do. I mean, and they're really great people.
JD's my law school roommate, and so I'm not responsible for any legal advice he gives you. Undersecretary Krach, first obligatory question. Do you know anything about this IG investigation? Anything at all?
You know what? I don't. Um, I actually don't know anything about it.
Neither do I. I just think I'll talk to Susan Crabtree about it tomorrow, but I just had to ask the question. Number 2, there was a huge story on Friday, which I want to talk about, which is Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing going to Doug Ducey's state. And Doug's a friend of mine. Before we do that, though, will you tell people what the Undersecretary for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment does?
Absolutely. So my mission is to develop and operationalize our global economic security strategy that maximizes national security, combats economic aggression, drives economic growth, and advances peace and prosperity around the world. So I lead economic diplomacy for the United States.
Well, this is vital. Then it's very important, and we're going to get to that. I did pass over one question though about the Browns. The guy who follows me on my Cleveland affiliate, Bob Franz, wanted to draft Sam Darnold. I was a Baker Mayfield guy from the beginning. Did you have a dog in that fight?
I did not have a dog in that fight, and so I stay out of the football politics side.
All right. But you also are the chairman and the CEO of the only Silicon Valley company on which I rely exclusively and for which I celebrate endlessly, DocuSign. I just want to thank you on behalf of everyone who hates paperwork for inventing DocuSign. We don't actually have to look at anything, we just click. I don't know where that came from. Did you invent that?
Well, I came in and I ran the company for 10 years. I won't take credit for that. That was our technical guys. But I can tell you, it was just a great experience, and it's a joy for me to be able to see that 800 million unique users around the world. It's making their lives simpler every day, and we declared war on paper.
Oh, you know what? I just think DocuSign. I could talk to you for an hour about DocuSign. It should get you the Nobel laureate or whoever designed it. Let's now talk about Taiwan Semiconductor. Doug Ducey has been stealing businesses from California for as long as he's been governor. I mean, just like Rick Perry did when he was running Texas. They just come over with sticky fingers and they take businesses out. Now you're stealing businesses from Taiwan and taking them to Arizona. Why is Taiwan Semiconductor or Manufacturing, TSMC, going to Arizona?
Well, if you look at TSMC, they plan to invest $12 billion in a truly massive, which is truly a massive sum. It's probably the biggest onshoring in decades. It's absolutely historic. It's a game changer for the U.S. semiconductor industry, and that will bolster American national security and economic prosperity. A big thing behind that is that the semiconductors they make, these chips, are the most sophisticated in the world. And the plant they're going to build is a 5-nanometer plant, which means it will be absolutely state of the art. And it powers everything from AI to 5G to F-35. So, and this investment is going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs of skilled Americans. And, this is such a big win for the United States, such a big win for President Trump. And it's also going to strengthen our relationship with Taiwan, who's a vibrant democracy and a force for good in the world and a great friend to the U.S.
All right. So, Undersecretary Krach, when we do this, we get two great benefits. Not only the semiconductors, I'll come to 5G and Huawei in a second, but you have a roadmap for the return of everything: pharmaceuticals, nuclear production of enrichment facility, everything. If you can bring back chip manufacturing, you've got a map to bring back everything. So how complicated is this map? How many twists and turns to get TSMC into Arizona?
Well, they were absolutely great. They analyzed the situation, and they ran the numbers, and they really came down to the conclusion that the environment that President Trump has put together in terms of the economic climate, in terms of reducing taxes, regulation, reform, all of that was a big contributing factor, as well as highly skilled workforce, and then also the research capabilities in the United States. And the state of Arizona did a great job as well in terms of providing incentives. So it was a total team effort, and it's part of what the State Department's working on, along with key U.S. government partners, in terms of striving to secure and diversify American supply chain. So, and this includes returning manufacturing in the U.S. and expanding, our base of international manufacturing partners. And that's really, right?
They didn't go to California, Keith Krach. And I ask you this as a fellow Buckeye who left Ohio at the age of 22 and went to California for 30 years. They didn't go to California. Do you have any optimism that anything's going to go back to California the way that state is currently governed?
Well, I've spent the last 30 years in Silicon Valley, and I can tell you it's an amazing place. It's the West Point of capitalism. It's a United Nations of people from all around the world. It's total meritocracy. It's a place where failure is looked upon as part of that learning experience. And the only way to be a failure is not to have failed. So it's a high risk environment. And it's also, from a cultural standpoint, it's a land of give back and pay forward. And if you look at the genealogy of Silicon Valley, you can see one person who's mentored the other and all of that. So there's magic there.
Well, I've spent some time with Peter Thiel, and I loved his book, 0 to 1. So I understand what you're saying. I think you're probably the only two Republicans to emerge out of the Silicon Valley. Am I right about that?
Well, I think there's a lot of them out there. You just got to look for them. What I believe and the thing about Silicon Valley is that it's different temperaments, talents, and conviction. And I really believe that diversity of thought is the catalyst for genius. So that's what you have going on out there in Silicon Valley.
This is off topic a little bit, Keith, but I want to ask you this because you know Warren, Ohio, you know Lordstown, you know Packard. Why hasn't Silicon Valley gone into a place like Lordstown or Northeastern Ohio, which has all the intellectual capital, all the infrastructure, all the water you could possibly need? Why have they not invested there like they have, for example, in Ann Arbor, home of the damned and the worst football program in the world? Why did Google go there and not to Northeastern Ohio?
Well, I think that's a good question, because I think Northeast Ohio is just an absolutely amazing place. The people are the salt of the earth, the friendliest, around, great human capital. And I think, I'm hoping it will out there in the future.
Are you a Gilmore Academy guy, or are you one of the high schools local in Cleveland?
I'm Rocky River High School. I'm a budding pirate.
All right, just checking on that. Let's go back to Huawei and 5G. The reason this chip deal with TSMC is so important is it gives us back 5G. Am I right about that?
By the way, you're right. And so if you look at Friday, what we announced, I call it the 5G trifecta, and what that is that's the combination of that TSMC investment, the tightening of export controls to restrain Huawei, and then also the 5G clean path. And so together, these three represent a quantum leap in terms of our national security and our economic security. And the foreign direct product rule, what that means is that Huawei, since its addition on the entity list, has persisted in its efforts to circumvent U.S. export controls, and Huawei benefited from a loophole that allowed it to make use of U.S. electronic design software and manufacturing equipment to continue producing its own semiconductors. And that ended on Friday. So the United States is closing the loophole to prevent Huawei from exploiting U.S. technology and threatening our national security. And Huawei cannot be trusted to respect the rule of law. And it's required in the PRC to cooperate with Beijing's security and intelligence services. And so any Chinese company, state-owned or otherwise, or any Chinese citizen has to turn over any information, proprietary technology, intellectual property, or data upon request to the government of China or to the Communist Party or to the PLA upon request. Otherwise, they got to suffer the consequences.
So key question. You're a very sophisticated, successful Silicon Valley guy. Were you aware when you got into the government of the scale and nature of the CCP's actions towards the United States? In other words, were you fully read into how in attack mode the CCP is on free enterprise?
Wow, that is a great question. So here's what I knew coming into the government. Number one, with my Ohio roots, my dad had a 5-person machine shop in Cleveland. During the good times. The tough times, it was just me and him. I could lay a welding bead at age 12, and so I saw China's weapons of mass production just absolutely just gut our economic engine, and those are the small, medium-sized manufacturers. I also saw when I was the vice president of General Motors, if you're going to build a plant over in China, you're not just handing the blueprints, you're handing them the process engineering skills, you're training their labor force. And then I saw out in Silicon Valley, I've experienced having my intellectual property ripped off. And by the way, the reason why I came to the government, I literally didn't know anybody. It was when I was running DocuSign, I went over to China because we had entered every major country, and I spent 2 weeks there. And I heard 5 of the top 7 Politburo, their rhetoric. I saw their technology, and I came to Washington. I just want to look in everybody's eyes and go, hey, do you understand that the country that has the best technology usually wins the war? And that's when I got asked to serve. Now, since I've been in, and what I see is beyond my wildest expectations. This is truly a malign regime that is hell-bent on global domination. President Xi has stated by 2049 they want to be the dominant global superpower. And by the way, they've been in economic war with us for 40 years. And in Silicon Valley, we practice economic warcraft, but we play by the rules because out there your integrity is everything. They do not.
On that note, Undersecretary Krach, we are out of time, but come back because I think you just summarized what people need to know, that this is truly a malign regime, hell-bent on global domination. That's the takeaway from this interview. Good to have a Clevelander in the administration. Good to have a Buckeye calling the shots. Good to get manufacturing back to Arizona from Taiwan. Thank you, Undersecretary Krach, for joining me.